Let's ask one now. Joining us, senior Democratic Senator from Delaware, Chris Coons. Senator, it's good to have you.
Thank you, Katie. Great to be on with you. It's going to be a long afternoon.
Are you going to vote to fund this war?
No. To be clear, Katie, I'm going to press Secretary Hegseth on how it's possible that he is in a crisis and desperately needs more money when there are at least $75 billion unspent and unobligated in the Department of Defense, when we haven't gotten a clear accounting of the financial costs of this war, but we have an ever more grim accounting of the human costs of this war. More than 400 American service members injured or wounded, and the department hasn't given us a full and transparent accounting of that until pressed recently to do so. And tomorrow at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, we will try to console the families and welcome home the remains of the 3 latest American service members killed in this war in Iran. It's important, I think, Katie, that we emphasize that Democrats stand strong in support of the men and women of our armed forces, that we voted just last year to give them a record amount of appropriations. And yet here we are with Secretary Hegseth, often distracted by culture wars, often prioritizing things other than the safety and security of our nation and our troops, asking for $67 billion more. I'll press him hard on explaining how it's possible that they need more money now.
What do you need to hear from him?
An answer and a strategy. Part of the challenge with Secretary Hegseth is he is a master of distraction, just like President Trump. He has spent a huge amount of his time as secretary talking about things that are not directly related to protecting our troops, our bases, and our allies. He doesn't have a clear strategy or plan for how to get out of this war in Iran, how to move past the stalemate, as you put it, and how to secure the critically needed counter-drone protections that would keep our troops safe, that would protect our homeland and our partners and allies. Instead, he's mostly wanted to talk about renaming military bases, taking books out of the libraries of the service academies, preventing the promotion or actively firing leaders in our military who have decades of experience who happen to be women or black, erasing from the history of the department folks like the Tuskegee Airmen who were a key part of our nation's success in the past, on denying vaccine policies that will protect our troops from flu. There are so many ways that he's been coloring outside the lines of strictly focusing on protecting and defending our nation and our troops that I could spend hours questioning him. But, Katie, I only get 5 minutes.
The president has been making more threats toward Iran. There are more U.S. warplanes being sent to the region. Will we be getting into a broader war?
Clearly we are. Look, it's been obvious to anyone who studies Iran and its history that they are an ideological regime, a dangerous regime, a regime that has supported proxies throughout the region, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and that their first move when they perceived President Trump to trying to overthrow their regime would be to broaden the war. They have for years supplied Russia with cheap, lethal Shahed drones that Russia has used to attack Ukraine, to terrible effect. So it was entirely predictable that they would use their large stockpile of Shahed drones and naval mines to close the Strait of Hormuz, to attack our allies and partners in the region, and to attack our troops and our bases. And there is no clear plan for how to counter that. Remember, the #1 goal at this point for Secretary Hegseth and Chairman Kaine, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, is to reopen the Straits of Hormuz. They were open just 6 months ago when this war of choice began.
There's one school of thought that the president is making these big threats about an increased bombing campaign and broader war in order to get the Iranians back to the negotiating table. Will that work?
I doubt it. I hope it works. I think it is in our country's best interest to stop the escalation and the rising costs and instead get back to the negotiating table. But let's remember, President Trump had all sorts of different goals for this war. He didn't make the case to the American people. He didn't come to the American Congress to say, here's exactly what I'm trying to do. At times, he said this was a war to overthrow the Iranian regime. Remember him saying help is on the way to the thousands of protesters who were brutally massacred after relying on Trump's promises early this year. He said this was a war to end their ballistic missile program, a war to end their ability to use their proxies in the region, a war to constrain their nuclear weapons program. And frankly, it's unclear how any of those have been achieved. We have Ayatollah 2.0 in control of the country, and the IRGC more brutally repressing their people. It's a more extreme regime today, and their central goal is just to survive. And they've got the capacity, I think, to survive past a lot more bombing. And I don't think the American people have the will for us to commit ground troops and lose thousands and thousands of Americans on the ground in order to achieve some of these various goals President Trump has thrown out. The reason to make the case to Congress and the American people is so that when the costs of a war that had been promised to be cheap and quick end up being long and costly, we understand why. He didn't do that. And that's one of his key challenges now, lacking a strategy and lacking broad support from the American people.
Senator, I just saw, I believe that's General Dan Kane walking into the hearing room. I know you've got to get there to ask questions. Here is Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also entering the room. You've got 5 minutes. I do not want to cut you short. So thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Katie. Good to be on with you.